The crumbling stone of my home disappeared behind the tree line, swallowed by the encroaching wilds. Each step I took was a goodbye, a final severing of ties to the life I once knew. The world ahead was a canvas of untamed forests and skeletal ruins, a stark reminder of the cataclysm that had stolen everything from me. My tattered cloak whipped around me in the biting wind, a poor shield against the growing chill of both the air and my own heart. Survival wasn't enough. Not anymore. I needed power, the kind of power that could defy fate, that could rewrite the ending to my story. My journey began in earnest. Days bled into nights under a sky that felt alien, a perpetual twilight, bruised with shades of purple and gray. The sun was a distant, cold memory. I navigated through twisted forests where the trees seemed to claw at the sky, their branches like gnarled fingers. I crossed barren plains, littered with the debris of forgotten civilizations, the wind whistling mournfully through the husks of ancient buildings. Loneliness was a constant companion, a heavy weight that settled deep in my bones, but I pushed on, driven by a desperate, burning need. The first real test came in the shadow of a colossal, shattered archway that must have once been a grand city gate. A pack of creatures, their bodies a grotesque fusion of chitin and shadow, burst from the rubble. Their screeches echoed in the desolate landscape, a sound that promised a swift and brutal end. My sword, a simple, worn blade, felt clumsy and inadequate in my hands. The fight was a blur of frantic swings and desperate dodges. I was outmatched, my movements sloppy, my stamina failing. I felt claws tear at my arm, a searing pain that shot through me, and I stumbled back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I only survived through sheer, dumb luck, managing to impale one creature on a shard of fallen masonry and scaring the others away with a wild, desperate roar. I collapsed against the cold stone, clutching my wounded arm. Blood dripped from my fingers, staining the gray dust a dark crimson. As I lay there, gasping for air, the world felt diferent. The silence that followed the fight was heavier, more profound. It wasn't empty. It was watchful. A shiver that had nothing to do with the cold ran down my spine. The air grew thick, and a strange pressure built around me, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. I felt a presence, unseen but undeniably there, its attention fixed solely on me. Something was watching me. I staggered to my feet, my senses on high alert. I pushed deeper into the ruins, the feeling of being observed growing with every step. I was no longer just a traveler in a desolate land. I was prey. The world around me seemed to writhe with a life I hadn't perceived before. Shadows stretched and danced in my peripheral vision, taking on monstrous shapes before dissolving back into nothingness. The silence was broken by whispers, faint at first, like the rustling of dead leaves, but they grew clearer, more distinct. They were insidious, slithering into my thoughts, curling around the edges of my consciousness, and they were calling my name. Kael. The voice was not one I recognized, yet it felt ancient, familiar in a way that terrified me. It wasn't sound traveling through the air. It was a thought implanted directly into my mind. I clapped my hands over my ears. A futile gesture. The whispers only grew louder, more insistent. They promised knowledge. They promised strength. They promised the power I so desperately craved. It was a seductive song, preying on the raw, open wound of my grief and helplessness. I tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The whispers were everywhere, echoing in the hollow chambers of my own skull. As I fled through a maze of crumbling corridors, I stumbled into a vast, circular chamber. The ceiling had collapsed long ago, revealing the starless, perpetual twilight of the sky. In the center of the chamber stood a single, obsidian pillar, pulsating with a faint, dark light that seemed to suck the very warmth from the air. The whispers converged here, their source undeniable. They emanated from the pillar, a siren's call of dark energy. The air hummed with a power that made the hair on my arm stand on end. I felt drawn to it, a moth to a sinister flame. This was Italiano. This was the source of the presence I had felt. This was the origin of the whispers. My fear warred with a dark, burgeoning curiosity. What was this thing? And why was it calling to me? The power radiating from the pillar was intoxicating. A promise of everything I had lost and everything I could gain. I took a hesitant step forward, then another. The whispers intensified, weaving tales of glory and vengeance, showing me visions of a world kneeling at my feet, of my enemies turned to dust. They knew my deepest desires. They knew my pain. My hand trembled as I reached out, my fingers inches from the cold, smooth surface of the obsidian. The whispers were a roar now, a symphony of dark promises flooding my mind. They told me that survival was just the beginning. They told me that to fight the darkness, I had to embrace a greater darkness. They told me this power was my birthright, a gift from the fallen star itself. As my fingertips brushed against the pillar, a jolt of ice and fire shot through my entire body. The world fractured. The whispers screamed. The darkness awakens.